Okay, well, Sheikh Jamal, it's a question for you, and I believe that you have touched on it, but and obviously Sheikh Hassan has touched on it as well. But if you could give us a summary of what should be the Muslims' response right now. Do we go out and protest? If we go out and protest, how do we protest? I mean, some people are just. I mean, someone was justifying the looting, but I think this is the only way that they are going to listen to us. If we protest quietly, no one's going to listen. But as soon as we start tearing up things, then they're going to listen. As soon as you start smashing the stores, smashing the windows, and causing some damage and hitting them where it hurts, then they're going to listen, and then they're going to perhaps want to change. But this peaceful thing, no. And somebody I was watching the news. He said the time of SubhanAllah, Martin Luther King is gone. We don't need that right now. We need Malcolm X and other type of figures in their militant phase. That's what we need now, because that's what needs to be portrayed, and people need to listen to that. So I don't know what you feel on that.
Okay. All right. So the first thing I think about that is this. As far as Muslims, we stand for justice, right? We stand for justice because we follow the just, capital J for just, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, for instance, I'm not pro-Muslim, right? What I am is pro-justice, pro-truth, right? Because justice is with Allah. Truth is with Allah. I'm on Allah's side. I'm not on anybody else's side. I'm on Allah's side, right? So now when an injustice occurs, we have to step up and speak against that injustice. Like our teachers taught us, Habib Ali al-Jafri once said to me, that even when people speak out against scholars that you probably don't even agree with, you don't let people just talk about the ulama just any old kind of way, period. You defend them, right? Even if they don't agree with you. It's just like he used to tell me, like I used to complain because like I was like the worst student. And I was complaining to him about that. And he said, do you really want to be ahead of your peers? I said, yeah. He said, well, then you have to sincerely want them to be ahead of you, right? So I said, okay. I had to think about that for a long time. So
You said that again?
that if you truly want to be ahead of your peers, then you have to sincerely want them to be ahead of you. And so I had to digest that for a while, and when that realization came, that's how I became. That's what I was. I was that person who sincerely wanted the people to be ahead of me, and they are, as far as I'm concerned. But the point I'm trying to make is that when we're talking about SubhanAllah, I had like 5 thoughts in my head at one time and got lost. Anyways, just say what I got to say. When we're looking at what is the best method, we have to be people of justice, or period, point blank. Okay? Now, being just, how do we deal with that justice? By protesting, by getting out and saying things? Yes, that's one thing. Peaceful protest. Well, here's the thing. When you are talking about a message, you're trying to get across a message. We don't like this, we're not for it, we want change. Okay. When you start doing stupid stuff, like rioting, you change the narrative. And in fact, what happens is you lose control. You lose the power of the movement. Why do I say this? All right, let me put it to you like this. There was a man here in America whose business was going under because of the pandemic. He was losing, he had to fire people. He couldn't pay his bills. He was losing his shop. He was about to go bankrupt, okay? Well, when the riots started, His business was ransacked, burned up, equipment messed up, everything. And his insurance basically put him well above the red. Okay. So he went from a state where he was about to lose everything. Now this man's got surplus of money based on insurance. Now the question is, did people really riot? Did people really tear up his shop? Right? We already know that through these protests, there have been provocateurs, undercover cops, anarchists, other white supremacist groups coming out there trying to start stuff. Right? Why? Because they want to change the narrative. Because now it's no longer about the power of the movement has been taken away and overshadowed by what? The riots. You see what I'm saying? Like Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem at a American football match, only because he couldn't stand for a country or a flag or an anthem that is in support of police brutality, that does not check itself and does not address the inequalities, the injustice that is going on to and instituted against other American people. It's a farce. It's a lie. So I can't stand for that. So he kneels peacefully, and look at all the noise that has happened because of Colin Kaepernick. Now, the thing about it was somebody came in and changed the narrative. Oh, it's against our first responders. Oh, it's against the military. Oh, it's against this. So now everybody's saying, oh, see, he's against America. Oh, he hates America. Oh, he hates this. No, he was bringing light to the subject of police brutality, which we're talking about again, for which he chose to do things peacefully. But powers that be changed the narrative. And now the power of his movement, I mean, people tried to keep it and revive it and keep it moving. But the reality is that it's been overshadowed by most Americans, and the people that really need to hear it and understand it and listen and try to make action as a result of what was done are now focused on the wrong thing. So again, when you start rioting, again, it's another way to take away the power of the movement. So in one way, okay, you're saying violence, that's the only way they're going to hear us, because you start tearing stuff up. But then the problem is then you're tearing up businesses and destroying the resources that the people in your own communities actually need. So you're going around tearing up stuff in your own neighborhoods, and that makes no sense. Because the people that lose out are the people in your community. So you've just looted, and then tomorrow morning you need some milk for your baby. Well, you can't get your baby milk because you tore the street up. You tore the shop up last night. You've got no water. You can't go purchase water now because you just tore up and you burned down the shop, the corner store that would have provided you with the resources that were needed for the community. And so therefore, you're just destroying things, and again, resources that your community actually needs. So rioting doesn't really help out. Two, when you start rioting, not only does it change the narrative, but what it also does is it also means, again, because we're talking about power, you lose power. And when you lose power, you can be controlled. You understand? Because people now can control you. Because now we understand, we know how to maneuver these people. Like, for instance, you want to control the Muslims? You want to make Muslims look bad? Go burn a Quran. Or go draw a picture of the Prophet ﷺ and watch them. Just watch what happens. Just watch the Muslims. They're going to go crazy. That's why they're barbaric. Oh, they're savages. They're going to tear up everything. They don't have an intelligent nor academic response to these things that are happening. No, they're not civilized. Let's watch. Happens every time. And then in the midst of the riots, guess what? We can start doing other little things. See, we can get them to be our distraction as we go and do what? Other little things. And this is no different. So you start trying to get into rioting and things like that. Well, then you're just opening up the door for other little things to happen. And again, like we said, I was mentioning that story about the gentleman whose business burned down. Again, the question is, Did it really burn down because people just really rioted, or did he send some provocateurs to go and tear it up? Or while the riots were happening, he paid some people to go out into the crowd, and as soon as the riots start, I want you to burn my shop up. You see what I'm saying? People find profit in these things, and so you're giving people the leverage to utilize lack of control. So again, you lose the power of the movement. Now, I agree that a protest that does not end up with policy was a waste. I do agree with that. I do agree with that. I agree with the fact that it needs to be more than just a protest. I mean, when people were protesting against Wall Street, sleeping out and camping out in the middle of the streets in New York and these kind of things, and these were white people that were doing it, okay, it was great. They did it. They made a statement, but it changed nothing. Wall Street still continued on as it does and always has been. So you didn't really provide much change there. But I think that, and two, let me go back to what you said about Malcolm X. Malcolm X and his issue by any means necessary, Malcolm X was not a, supporter of senseless rioting. If you understand anything about the Nation of Islam and himself, these people were organized. Right? These people were organized. So, and violence meaning, and he said it himself, if a man basically slaps you, you ain't gonna turn another cheek, you're gonna try and knock him out. So in other words, he's talking about self-defense. We're going to defend ourselves by any means necessary. We're going to protect our families by any means necessary. You know, like Hasan was saying, he had to talk these brothers down because he loved them and he wanted to protect them because these guys are upset. But now these guys go out and do what they do. Now Hasan's got to go and try and protect this man's family. Because he's part of a community, as he's been mentioning. So now as a community, you got to take care of this family. You got to take care of this man's children, these kind of things. And that's a lot. That's a lot. Brother, you're not helping the movement if you're behind bars. You can't help me to build, which is what Imam Hasan was also talking about. I can't build my institutions. I can't build those things that are going to put us in a different level, as Imam Malcolm used to say, that if you, when we are part of the haves and you have, then guess what? You got to talk to me at the same level, right? You got to talk to me eye to eye, man to man. But if I'm still at this level of degradation, it's going to be hard for me to have this conversation, and I'm going to be doing the same wild stuff. So you got to help me to build so that we can come from a point of view of our own power base. And that's very important. So to get out there and say, oh, they're not going to listen, they're still not going to listen. Because what you do when you riot is they're not listening to the movement. Now they're focusing on people robbing, because the minute you start tearing up stuff, people don't just tear up stuff, they also steal. Now you've become a criminal. And once you become a criminal, now you've opened up the door for getting your butt kicked by the police when they catch you. You open, and they can say you resisted and you weren't compliant and these kind of things. And so now you've given them reason to kick you behind, right? And and then you probably got a record now for not only just destroying property, but you're going to jail because you were stealing. And so now that leads to a whole nother level a whole nother string of events that we're trying to avoid, or we're trying to get rid of, in terms of how our system is just unjust. Now you become a part of the system, and that's not what we want. We don't want more people becoming part of the system. And I need to say this too, for people who wish to protest. I mean, go out there and protest. Let your voices be heard. Let your voices be heard. But don't do it just because it's a novelty, right? I was watching the news the other day, and these white girls got arrested, right? And then when they got free, they came out jumping. They were jumping and grabbing on. It's like, yeah, we did it. It's like to say we're legit now because we went to jail. I protested. I went to jail. Oh, I'm legit. I'm a real activist now. You know what I mean? Like it's a faddish thing. Like, like you got some street credibility because you wound up going to jail for a protest. I mean, did you do it because you were sincere about what your movement was about, what you believe in, and ideology? Because this is not a game. This is not a game. We're talking about the development of people's lives. We're talking about the development of a country, a development of a people, right? So this is not a game. So I don't want people, if you feel the need to protest, protest. You need to speak out on social media, speak out on social media, but be sincere about what you're doing. Be sincere. That's all I say. And don't use this as an excuse because, oh, I don't like Brother Muhammad's shop. I've never liked Brother Muhammad, so I'm going to use this right as a means to go down there and tear his store up. You know, or I'm going to use it as a means to mess up his building, or, Saeed just got this brand new BMW and, he's been flossing a little bit too much and I don't like his arrogance. I'm going to go tear his car up, literally because you're jealous because you don't have a BMW or you don't like the way he's doing things. And so now you want to tear it up. You see, people have ulterior motives. So we have to be smart. We have to be in control. And we cannot allow our power, the power of the movement, to be taken, period.
Sayyidi Hasan, mashallah. I forgot what the question was. I asked Sheikh Jamal because he's, mashallah, there's just so much he said. But I think it's the issue of protesting and some of our youth saying that if we don't protest and tear things up and loot, no one's going to listen. We've tried the softy approach. We've tried the peaceful marches. They don't listen. We've got to hit them where it hurts them the most, which is financially. So we tear up all the shops and do all this thing, and then they're gonna listen. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think, but now for one, I don't measure non-Muslims by the same measurement that we hold ourselves as Muslims, right? So I'm not going to tell a non-Muslim that he's wrong. I can tell him I don't agree with it, and as Muslims, we don't think it's wrong. I mean, that we believe it's wrong, but I'm not going to necessarily tell him he's wrong for going out there and responding in a way where he feels he's trying to get his point across. But what I will say, when people always say that they're trying to, hit them in their pockets, there's something that's more important to these people than their pockets. Now, their pockets matter. Don't get me wrong. They, when Saddam Hussein changed it from the dollar to the euro, he got wiped up out of there. And there's plenty of other situations like that, right? But nonetheless, so you play with their money, they'll come get you. But more than money is their control and power, right? And when you're talking about the very few people, we're talking about families. We're not talking about one individual or whatnot. The people who actually control the so-called establishment, the powers that be, right? I mean, these people, they have, just limited resources and monies. All their businesses are insured. When you hurt their businesses, they actually come up, right? They actually, situation, I think that was maybe a smaller business, what Jamal mentioned, but it's the same thing. Who it hurts are the people who work at these places, right? And the small business owners. In fact, I just had a meeting with one because some of my beloved, beautiful nephews, I don't know if they're going to see this, but I love you, so don't be mad at me for keep bringing y'all up. Is that, because there was a little altercation and this brother felt like his store was about to be destroyed. So, and this brother's Muslim himself, black-owned business. In fact, in Oakland, it's the only black-owned district in not just Oakland, but in California, the entire West Coast. And so, on this particular block, there's one African-American gentleman that owns the whole block, and every store is a black-ran store, right? And so we went and sat down with the brother. One of the things he said, I don't know the legalities around his contract or whatever, but he was just like, because anyway, he couldn't be insured in a certain type of way. And he said, if they burn my store down, he says, I'm done. His situation's over with if they destroy his store. So I think it's really juvenile to think that you're hurting those people, right? Even if the economy crashes, which they don't want it to crash, but look at economists and people who study the past economies, right, of different civilizations. You know who bankrupt? Who you know who it benefits the most in those situations? Where the rich, the very people who have, they're the ones who they got their financial portfolio is, you know what I'm saying? This much in precious metals, this much in natural resources, stocks in this country, You're not harming these people, right? But what you are harming, you are disrupting the flow of society, which they don't like. In fact, I had it was one of our brethren out there on your side of the pond, as you know, you Brits say. He said to me, "Oh, America," he said, Britain will never be, show how barbaric how barbaric the American establishment is with it, like being a police state. He said the UK would never do that. This is years ago, back in the days that you talking about, we used to sit and talk. And I said to him, I said, who do you think we are? Meaning as a country, America, we are the children of the UK, right? Where do you think that it was taught somewhere? It just didn't pop out of nowhere, right? And I said, let the British establishment feel that their way of life is being threatened, and you're going to see the same type of response that we seeing over here. And you guys have in some instances, but I don't want to start speaking outside of what I know, because that's on your end over there. But so if a person is going to participate in protests, right? I'm not against protest. I'm against anarchism. I'm against the destruction of property and harming people, right? But me myself, I don't see. So that would mean peaceful protesting is left, right? Which I don't really think is too beneficial in of itself. But I don't criticize the people who do it. I think if a person is going to participate in anything, they need to ask themselves what they hope to get out of it. That's my measurement for if something is successful, what comes out of it. If we build networks with each other and we strategize collectively afterwards, then I think that was a success. But as Sheikh Jamal pointed out earlier, if it's just a feel-good moment so I can feel better about myself, then you just playing with these affairs,
With your nephew, you finish off the story with your nephew. What happened next?
Huh?
The story of your nephew.
I mean, we just had to go have a sit down, and we have to have a meeting with the other party to to make sure that the situation didn't escalate and turn into something that nobody wanted it to be. So alhamdulillah, everybody involved was Muslims, so alhamdulillah, for the most part. So alhamdulillah, at least the key people. Yeah.
Right.
What kind of conversation did you have with him?
There was just a misunderstanding. There was a misunderstanding that took place, and one of the non-Muslims, right? One of the non-Muslims who owned one of the stores on the block, he pulled a weapon, right? He didn't point it at him, right? But he pulled a weapon, and it was just a lot of chaos. And the nephews were upset. They were like, man. But alhamdulillah, when we went to sit down with him, the gentleman the brother had footage. I'm not saying no names because I don't know if they would want their names mentioned. But he actually had video we can look at, and it was clear that he didn't see the gentleman who pulled the gun on them. So we just wanted to make sure that there wasn't, to get answers. I don't think nobody's going to respond nicely to someone pulling a weapon on them. So, we just wanted to make sure that we squashed the situation and it didn't go any further. Alhamdulillah.
Imam Zane, are you familiar with the Stephen Lawrence case?
Yes,
Right.
I am.
Now, Stephen Lawrence and Imam Hasan, Stephen Lawrence was a black man, Afro-Caribbean in the UK, who was killed by police. Now, again, the UK, they don't carry guns, but you're still killing people, right? And that happened quite frequently throughout the UK, killing of black men by the police. But this particular case, the police botched it up as usual, There were no arrests. The two men who did it, I'm sorry, it wasn't police officers who killed him. It was two other white men who killed him. But the police botched up the case. Basically, these guys went free. It was, I think, one of your newspapers, I can't remember, I don't know if it's the Daily Mail or one of them is kind of like a Fox News styled. It was a very conservative, very racial, owned by a known racist. Well, after those two men were set free, this racist man basically posted in his newspaper, "These two men are murderers." Put it out there, plain and simple. That basically, even though they got off free, the fact is those guys were murderers. I mean, he had to come to a point where truth had to be told. Truth had to prevail. And so when he put on his newspaper, that these two men were murderers, it changed everything. Because obviously those men wound up going to jail. And it was a situation in which white Britain had to figure out that, wait a minute, this stuff is not acceptable. We got a known racist dude over here speaking truth finally. And when it's kind of like when he did it, I guess all the other whites started saying, well, hey, I guess I can too. And so it set off a domino effect to the point where the UK is like it is now. You're seeing a lot more interracial marriages, a lot more interracial children, all these different things are happening. You know, people are getting positions and able to work in places that they weren't before. Not that things are great. Not that things are great, because I'm not saying that. But it changed the landscape of Britain. Likewise, in the United States, we need that same kind of thing, because as I said earlier, white people need to hold themselves a little bit more accountable. And it is an issue in which they have to, again, police themselves, start letting each other know and you know, determining for themselves that this is wrong. It's about truth and it's about justice. And once they have accepted that and they move on that, then you start seeing a little bit of change. But that's on that end. That's on that end. But it goes back to also with Hasan, what Imam Hasan is saying, that developing, when people have that type of mindset, they tend to want to reach out. And once they reach out, that's when you begin to develop those relationships. And when you develop those relationships, that's when you start seeing things flourish. You know, we always talk about the ayat of Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He has created us from different tribes that we may know one another, right? I don't know if anybody's really ever thought about that. But what does it mean that different tribes so that you may know one another? The way Jamal looks at that is that it is to say that when you come from a tribe, that person comes from a tribe. You come from a group of people, they come from a group of people. Thing is, everybody's different. Your customs, the way you do things, your thought pattern, your philosophies, your mannerisms, the things that you deem important are all going to be different. But when you come together, right, with an open mind at least, and learn from one another, it enriches your experience as a person. And you are able to take back some of the good aspects that you have encountered from this other tribe and bring that back to your people, that they may be able to become elevated in one way or another. And that goes all the way around. You see what I'm saying? So there are things that we can take. The reason I think we're brought up in these different cultures and different races is so that we can, as a human being, as humans, come together and take those best aspects of one another, of each other's different groups, of our differences, and learn how to be stronger. Right? It's just like when two people get married. Well, he's a little bit country, she's a little bit, he's a little bit country, she's a little bit rock and roll. But when they get together, they're making beautiful music together because they're learning how to take those two sounds and bring them together. You know what I mean? And they're bringing those two sounds, bringing them together to create something really beautiful when they learn how to harmonize together. Right? That's a husband and wife, but that goes with men. That goes with nations. That goes with everything. Learning to come together to bring to the table the best aspects of those lives. When we went to Turin, right? You know, Turin for me was, for anybody, is completely different than, like, say, being in Damascus. Damascus, I was still wearing slacks and I was still wearing button-down shirts and maybe a kufi, still wearing my gym shoes or even dress shoes sometimes, or casual shoes, these kind of things. You go to Turin, I was in a lungi, an Indonesian style shirt, wearing sandals, wearing flip-flops, you know what I mean? Sometimes walking the streets barefoot, totally different. Completely different, right? But there were aspects of that culture, right, of being in Turin, living amongst those people and understanding them. And I was enriched so that when I came back to the United States, a lot of the things that I learned in Turin, just culturally speaking, I still institute today. My stepdaughter, she was saying to me the other day, because when we have dinner, sometimes when we're not at the dinner table, I'm sitting on the floor. We have a little small table. I sit on the floor. She's like, how come you don't ever sit on the couch, on the sofa? So I'm comfortable here. How's a 50-year-old man comfortable sitting on the floor eating? I'm like, and I'm thinking in my head, I know 60, 70-year-old men that sit on the floor and eat. You know what I mean? But that's a different culture. But that to me is an enriching thing because I'm comfortable. And I get to see things from a different perspective. Because when you're sitting on the floor, you get to see everything on the floor, right? And you're looking up and you're looking at people from different perspectives and you're listening differently. You're seeing things differently. It's a small thing, but it's a very nuanced thing. The point is that the interaction with a different culture has enriched me. And at my job, last example, and I'm gonna stop talking. My job, when the gentleman I mentioned earlier who got killed by the two white men, they were father and son. Our company decided to have this big, our CEO decided, I want everybody in the company, he made everybody in the company get on a phone call. And he was discussing how enraged he was. He's a white guy from the South in Alabama, talking about how upset he was that this has happened. He felt like we need to talk about this. And he opened it up. He says, if anyone has feelings they want to share, please share. Myself and about maybe 20 other Black people that work for the company got on there and expressed their feelings and shared their experiences that they've had to deal with other white people, with police, with communities, and all these different things. And it literally rocked our company, and it definitely rocked him. He's now spending $1 million. He's on $1 million campaign trying to diversify our company even more than what it is. Because of that experience, you know, and a lot of companies are doing it. And sometimes you wonder, is that really genuine, or you just kind of say faith? But this man is about it. He really is about it. And I've seen a lot of pretenders in my day. He's not a pretender. He's about it. He's really about it, and he's taking this very, very serious. And days not going by that he's not sending messages out to the whole entire company about, you know, how enriched he feels. And that other people have responded to him since we have had that kind of discussion. And he feels as though our company has been enriched. And it's just a fact. When you are with people from other cultures, you grow. You grow. So if you stay isolated in one group of people, you're not going to grow. You're just going to be the same thing. You're going to be a product of the same old stuff. When you get out and you move around and you build those relationships, you not only build relationships, you build a level of understanding. You build a level of empathy, compassion, and these kind of things. And that, in addition to everything else that's been said, and is what's necessary, is what's needed. And I'm gonna say this too, last, my conclusion to what I'm saying now, there is no one answer in terms of solutions, because the situation is highly complex. Iblis knew what he was doing when he set this stuff off. When he started whispering, he knew what he was weaving. But even more so, Allah knew what people were going to do. So again, we turn ourselves to Allah. That's the ultimate solution, is to turn our hands to Allah and ask Allah to allow us change. Asking Allah to allow us change in ourselves, allow us to be better, allow us to even have a desire to be better. And we should even thank Allah for even allowing us to even make that kind of a dua. because there are millions who are not going to make that dua. And not even thinking about making that dua. They have no desire to make that dua. So to even put your hands up and ask Allah to be a change and be a better person and be better and remove the stains of racism and prejudice and discrimination out of your hearts towards other people of colors, people of different shades in your own ethnic group, against women, against kids, whatever, removing those stains out of your heart. That's a huge gift from Allah that you would even make, that He would allow you to even make dua. So that has to happen. When you're making that tahajjud, you got to be up asking Allah to change the situation of the ummah of Adam alayhi salam. Because we're all sons and daughters of, we're Bani Adam. And so we need to ask Allah to change Bani Adam and allow the people, including those who profess Islam, to know Him and to truly know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to be able to implement His plan and His way, His sunnah. We say, ala sirat, we say, ihdinas ala sirat mustaqim. Guide us upon what? The straight path. And as many scholars say, that straight path is the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's the path we want everybody to be on, not just, those who have taken shahada or call themselves Muslim. We want everybody to be Muslim. We want everybody to say, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasulullah. That's what we want. That's why we do da'wah. That's why we try to be living aspect or living signs or symbols of the da'wah of la ilaha illallah. So turn to Allah, get up there and ask Allah for change in yourself, in your family, in your community, in your group of friends. May Allah make the change. Ya Allah.
Ameen.